Just a minute. Sorry, it's a bit slow my end today. All right, welcome to our next webinar and our last webinar for this series on responsible purchasing. I'm going to hand over straight to Nick, who's the expert on this, and we can get cracking.
Hi, yeah, so as Xenia said, my name's Nick. I'm a data analyst here at Considerate, and I'll be talking about responsible purchasing. So global supply chains are complex, and it can be hard to understand the impact of the everyday items that we use. Lots of commonly purchased products can cause environmental damage or involve exploiting workers in poor working conditions. The choices that we make as consumers can have multiple knock-on effects, which means that by educating ourselves about the impact of supply chains and our everyday decisions, we can actually be a force for good, and we can help make a positive change. Currently, global consumerism is resulting in 8.8 billion tons of plastic being dumped into the ocean every year, and an area the size of the United Kingdom being deforested every year. So it's really important to start thinking about our impact and our effect on this.
So just to add on to what Nick just said, obviously what we're going to do is just talk about the principles and the philosophy of responsible purchasing and the things to take into account. We do more detailed purchasing policies and actually strategies that we can develop. So let us know if you're interested in any of that.
So the hospitality sector is making huge efforts to drastically improve its social and environmental impact. However, we have to remember that a major part of a business's environmental and social impact will be caused by their supply chain. The companies and suppliers that businesses associate themselves with reflect on business as a whole, and this can impact hugely on customer choice. And we're seeing that already, whereby 66% of American consumers have said they'd pay more for sustainable goods and services. And in a world where information travels so fast, guests now expect full transparency and accountability from the places that they stay. So it's really important for businesses to be in tight control of their supply chain. Two key issues that face businesses trying to purchase responsibly is greenwashing, so falling foul of companies claiming to be environmentally friendly but not actually walking the walk, so to speak, and accountability, whereby it's very easy to simply outsource the problem to another company. It's more difficult to actually own the impact of our own decisions.
And again, here the interesting thing is, I think through COVID-19, a lot of the supply chains are becoming smaller again, and people are looking at sourcing locally. So potentially that last point that Nick just mentioned might already be sort of correcting itself a little bit.
Yeah. So when purchasing, there are 7 key things to consider: necessity, production, ingredients, transport, packaging, and utilization and disposal. And I'll be focusing on each of them briefly throughout this webinar. So first up, we have necessity. So the key question here is whether all the products that you are purchasing are fully necessary. So force of habit can lead people to repeat previous orders without actually considering whether everything is necessary. And if we look back to a year and a half, couple of years ago, when Blue Planet was released by the BBC, and there was a huge public outcry over plastic straws and stirrers, and these were then consequently removed from bars and restaurants. And did it impact the quality of the product? Not in the slightest. So the key question here is whether there's anything else that could be cut out. Moving on to production, it's important to consider how products are made. So are the working conditions fair, or does the manufacturing process particularly damage the environment or use a lot of energy? A key thing to look out for here is certifications guaranteeing fair wages and working conditions, such as the Fair Trade label. It's also really important to remember that there's often not a perfect solution involved in sustainable procurement. So it's just up to us to try and make the most informed decision possible. For example, recently for one of our clients, we were making recommendations on their takeaway water bottles, and it transpired that whilst glass bottles use a lot of energy in the manufacturing process, if they are reused a minimum of 30 times, they actually use less energy per use than, for example, an aluminium can or a carton or a simple plastic bottle. So it's all about considering how effective you think the reuse process will be and just making what you feel is the best decision for your specific situation. In terms of the ingredients of a product, if you look at the ingredient lists of popular household cleaning or laundry brands, they're quite often a jumble of confusing names, and they can hide chemicals that, for example, toxic to aquatic life, or can even cause endocrine disruption in humans in large traces. Outside of cleaning products, there's also it's also important to consider whether any products you use have unsustainably sourced ingredients. So an obvious example here is palm oil. And it's really important that any products that you are purchasing containing palm oil should be certified sustainable. And that will most likely be by the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil or Green Palm. So it's really important to keep checking for these certifications and keep checking these ingredient lists. On to transport. An obvious example here is food miles. So for each mile that food travels, the higher its environmental impact. And when we consider this, we should also consider the impacts of land use and energy put into actually growing and harvesting the food. By buying locally sourced food, it's a double win, really. You can help support the local economy, and your restaurant should have fresher and higher quality ingredients to work with, as they've not been transported hundreds of miles. You could even grow your own food in a kitchen or a roof garden.
With an additional benefit on that one, because if you have a kitchen or rather a roof garden, it also insulates the building and it cools it in the summer and it keeps it warm in the winter. So there's a double positive effect on this one.
Yeah. And whilst food is an obvious example of this, forming links with local suppliers for any of your products will decrease the amount of transport involved and, as I said, help support the local economy. Then we have packaging. So nowadays we're talking about a different pandemic, but the plastic pandemic has been around for a lot longer. We've all been to a shop or ordered something off the internet and been flummoxed by the amount of packaging that comes associated with it. So when thinking about how the hospitality industry can cut down on packaging, a really good solution to this is buying in bulk. So by forming economies of scale, chains can increase their bargaining power and lower costs. And this also allows them to consolidate deliveries into fewer but bigger deliveries. So less packaging per individual product. Smaller businesses can try and start an honest discourse with suppliers to help nudge them towards more sustainable and responsible practices. Or if they wanted, they could try and partner with neighboring businesses to form purchasing coalitions and again, form that economy of scale, which gives you more power to try and push your suppliers to be a little bit more responsible. And then we have the utilization of the product. So that's how you can use your product economically, efficiently, and safely. So naturally, if a product is potentially hazardous to humans or the environment, full training should be provided to staff members using it. That's particularly relevant at the moment if your business is using new cleaning or hygiene products due to the pandemic. Make sure that it's not going to be being used irresponsibly. However, beyond that, if you've made the decision, for example, to introduce single-use plastics due to the pandemic, have you trained staff on how to use it properly, and make sure that you avoid producing even more waste than you are currently producing. And it's important to remember that being frugal with the products that you use not only cuts down on waste, but you'll also have to order less of them, so it'll save you money as well. And then finally, we have disposal. So obviously, the less items that go to landfill, the better. And a key way to avoid products going to landfill is during the purchasing stage to already be thinking forwards about how you're going to dispose of it. So here, a really good principle to remember is the 4Rs principle: reduce, reuse, replace, and recycle. You want to reduce the amount of the product that you use, reuse or donate the product rather than just discarding it, replace any single-use products where possible with reusable ones, and recycle. So make sure that any plastic products or aluminium products that you use are fully recyclable, and make sure that you have the waste separation to be able to do so. So yeah, as I said, forward thinking here is key. So that's an introduction to the world of responsible purchasing. If you'd like any more information about Conserve, our advisory service, or any of our toolkits, please feel free to email us. And if you missed any of our webinars, make sure that you catch them on our YouTube page at Considerate Group.